Hello again. So in this video, let's explain what are the main tools of the fiscal policy. So in the previous video, I explained what I mean by fiscal policy. So let me re-say it one more time. So I said whenever the market is in a recession, so the aggregate consumption is low, the aggregate private domestic investment is low. Consequently, we should expect that GDP will be low during the times of recession. If this is the case, so the federal government has to step in and take an action by stimulating the economy, by doing any action to stimulate the economy by stimulating the GDP. And this type of action or this type of stimulus action, we call it in economics a fiscal policy. So now let's continue from here in this video. So now we understand in general what I mean by fiscal policy, but what are the tools which the federal government has to implement the fiscal policy? So here we have, in this video, we'll see that the federal government has two main tools. So the first one, so these are the tools of the fiscal policy. So the first one is government spending, and the second one is taxes. So these are the two tools of fiscal policy. So government spending and taxes. In order to make it easy for you, so I'm going to explain this in another video, but what do you mean by the federal budget? I said that fiscal policy is implemented by the federal government, right? So what do you mean by the federal budget? So this is the federal budget. Any budget, if I want to explain the definition of budget in an easy way, so budget is simply what? It's simply revenue minus expenses, right? So if your revenues are more than your expenses, so you have a surplus. If your revenues is less than expenses, you have a deficit. So simple. So from the federal government perspective, what is the main source of revenue for the federal government? The main source of revenue is taxes. Whether personal income taxes, which the federal government collect from people, or the corporate taxes, which they collected from the business. And the main source of expenses is here, so which is the government spending, which is G. So here, this is G. So minus government spending. Okay, at the same time, I want to remind you with the formula of the GDP again. So this is GDP equals C plus I plus G plus X minus M. This is the formula for the GDP. Okay, so the two tools of the fiscal policy, government spending and taxes. Let's talk first about the government spending. So the government spending, here we have two different types of government spending. So the first one is called discretionary spending, and the second one is mandatory spending. Let's talk first about the mandatory spending. So mandatory spending, this is set. This type of spending is set by permanent laws, and this includes spending on social security benefits, Medicare, interest on national debt. So these are mandatory spending, and these are authorized by permanent law. The fiscal policy is not related to this type of spending. So the fiscal policy is related mainly to the first type of spending, which is discretionary spending. So this part of the budget that works its way through the appropriations process of the Congress. So this means if the federal government chose to select the government spending tool, which means increase government spending, this process has to be approved by the Congress. Okay, so this type of spending includes spending on national defense, transportation, science, environment, income security, and I want to add also the education. So like the federal scholarships in the universities. Which means so whenever there's a recession, we should expect that the government spend more on education, more on scholarships, The stimulus checks, which you found nowadays after the pandemic, this is an example of government spending. So let's go back to the formula of GDP. So whenever there is a recession and whenever there's a fiscal policy, we should expect that government spending will increase to offset the decrease in investment and consumption. And if the fiscal policy is effective, so we should expect the GDP will increase. Okay, so one of the tools of the fiscal policy is to increase the government spending. Okay, now what about the second tool of the fiscal policy? The second tool of the fiscal policy is taxes. So in normal times, whenever the market is normal, whenever the market is expanding, as I said, so this is the federal budget, so taxes minus spending. But whenever there's a recession and whenever there's a fiscal policy, so it makes more sense now to cut taxes, because the federal government wanna to motivate the people who have business to invest more. The federal government want to give more motive to the households to consume more, and this can be done by cutting taxes. So the federal government can cut the individual income taxes, can cut the social insurance taxes, can cut the corporate taxes. So by cutting the corporate taxes, they can stimulate the investment. By cutting the personal taxes, they can stimulate the consumption. So these are the two main tools of the fiscal policy. This is what I have for this video. Thank you, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.